Okay, I'm going to try this again. I'm sitting here over here like, is this ever going to work? Anyway, so today I want to talk about emotions because I think that we don't really know, we kind of struggle on knowing where to, how do you approach things when you're trying to be, an evolved person and be, gracious in the way that you approach different situations. Sometimes there's like a little bit of, a little bit of confusion as to how we should go about doing that. So in our Facebook presence, we're kind of one. We're showing the best side of ourselves usually. We're not always, we try and keep it as positive as we can. But we all have our limits, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And when we are, the more sort of growth that we go through ourselves, I don't know how to even say this. The more growth that we go through ourselves and the better person people that we want to be, we end up setting boundaries in our lives and realizing, sometimes that the relationships that we've had in the past maybe were a little bit toxic or weren't, those relationships didn't necessarily follow us through our, some of our growth. And so we have to go a different way than somebody else or whatever. And I found that sometimes when you have boundaries, that you're kind of, steadfast in, those get challenged. And so sometimes people will push boundaries, or even, like I'm a communicator. So I like to sort of, when something comes up in my life and I feel that, Luna, come here. Sorry, I have a new puppy and she's whining at the door because she wants to go out and bark at the neighbor dog puppies. But anyway, so I've had it, come up where I feel like I'm kind of just sticking to my boundaries and I'm approaching somebody calmly because I feel like they're kind of crossing those lines a little bit or whatever. And so I approach it. And then, sometimes those people, you're approaching it. And because I think I tend to be kind of, I let things go for quite a while sometimes, especially in my past. I didn't address things, right away like maybe I should have. And I still do this a little bit where, sometimes you have to pick your battles. And so you're kind of like, should I even say something about this or should I just let it go? And so I'll let something go for a while, or I'll just like make a little comment about it, but maybe they don't really understand that it's, an important issue to me. And so you can get into this situation where you feel like you just start kind of sticking to your boundaries and you're approaching a conversation with somebody about that. And then, 9 times out of 10, what's the first thing that somebody says when you're trying to stick to your boundaries? It's usually, oh my gosh, like you're not handling this right. It seems like they kind of come back on you and are like, oh, I can't believe that you're even bringing this up to me or that this is even an issue. It seems to me like a lot of times, and this is a normal response. This is the human response, is we're going to defend ourselves when we feel like we're not living up or we're not doing our part in some situation. And so sometimes when you're approaching somebody, you might mean it like, hey, this is a really not that huge of a deal. But something that I just want to work through. But in their minds, they're internalizing it like, oh my gosh, this person thinks that I'm a horrible person, or this person is, in order for her to be approaching me about it, it must be a really big deal to her, and whatever, or she's judging me or whatever. And I've had it throughout my life, not so much now, but occasionally. But throughout my life, I've had kind of toxic relationships to where when I feel like I'm just approaching something calmly, they come back with character assassinations, where they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, you're just a horrible person, that type of a thing, calling you names, or like you're just. You're acting like a bitch. This is my least favorite word probably, because I feel like it's way overused in everything. Women, we already feel bad enough about ourselves, and this word is just something I think that makes, like subconsciously we bring up. We remember hearing other people called it, or we remember being called it in our lives, and it can be in abusive relationships. It's used a lot, and so. I remember when I was a kid growing up in abusive situations that it was my mom my stepdad called my mom a bitch frequently, my mom, and he, and was very derogatory about things. And it doesn't have to be like that. So now I've learned that when I am angry, which is a normal emotion, we all feel anger, we all feel sadness, and we need to embrace those things. The beauty of, I was listening to one of my another coaching sort of mentor of mine, and she was talking about the beauty of humanity and that you're not always going to feel happy about things. I mean, look at everything that's going on around the world right now with the hurricanes and the fires and the riots and the gang stuff in Mexico. Like, we can go on and on and on. And when you're really empathic or even just a very sensitive person, those things, you feel those things a lot. And that can cause stressful dynamics in relationships and all sorts of things, because sometimes we're internalizing it, not really aware of our emotions about those things. And so I guess, we have to embrace all of the emotions that we feel and not be ashamed of those. So if we come to somebody, if this resonates with you guys, give me some hearts and likes, if you would, so that I know what, that I'm touching on some stuff. But so when you can let yourself feel the anger and maybe even express it, like, we don't have to be dickheads. Like, we don't have to be total jerks about things. But, there's going to be a time when you can't say everything necessarily in a nice way. Sometimes things that have to be said, and it's not going to be taken in a good way from the receiving party, right? And so we have to acknowledge that. So when we're approaching something that we know has to be said that's probably going to be uncomfortable, we can't then internalize that and beat ourselves up about having to have said that. So a lot of times we'll be in a conflict with somebody, or we'll be having a conversation that we don't necessarily even feel is a conflict, but they don't receive it, in the way we want them to or whatever. And they come back and they're like, like they put it on you, sort of like, you shouldn't have said it that way. You should know how to communicate better than this. Whatever it is, however they try and sort of sidestep the issue a little bit, you have to know that it's okay that they're upset at that moment. And it's okay that they're seeing it that way. That doesn't make you a bad person. You approaching something and maybe not even being completely tactful about it. I mean, we do our best to be, as kind as we can in the way that we approach things, but we're not perfect, and we're trying to communicate something that's important to us, and it's not always going to come out in the best way. And we can try and make amends with that later if we do, get out of line a little bit or whatever. But for the most part, what I'm talking about is when you're really you feel like you're approaching something in the way that it should be approached, calmly, not hitting below the belt, and doing it in a way that you feel it needs to be done. If they come back at you with something negative, don't internalize that so much. Yes, you can, definitely take accountability and responsibility for your actions, and if you're out of line, then recognize that and make amends for it. But at the same time, recognize that when somebody is defensive because you're approaching them about something, 9 times out of 10, they're also going to respond not in the best way. So, they might come back and just say, like, I just can't be around you right now, or I just can't be, whatever it is. And this is something that I think would have helped me probably 10 years ago when I was going through all of my big life changes and I was sort of figuring out which relationships were toxic and which ones, had hope and which ones really were just kind of in the toilet. I used to, because I am continually trying to grow myself, I take it, I've always taken it pretty personally when I know that somebody's upset with me or I have let somebody down or whatever. And recently I've had some situations where I've had to stick to my boundaries a little bit. Somebody gets upset about it and, I feel like they respond in a way that is negative towards my personality or something, like, and so I've learned to kind of be a little bit more proud of just being able to speak my voice, in a kind way, as long as I'm doing my best at that. I've walked away from some situations, in the last 6 months or whatever, where before I would have really beat myself up over the way I handled it, even though I handled it pretty well. But the other person, the way that they responded made me internalize it differently. So if somebody else comes out and says, well, you're just a freaking bitch, I would be devastated for a long time over that, because I'm like, I try really hard not to be a bitch and to be kind and to be whatever else. Where nowadays it's almost like, okay, that's there. Let's just give them some time to absorb what I've said, and then revisit this. And maybe it's not just me. Luna, come here. Sit down. She's so lonely sometimes, huh? You just don't know what you want. Puppies, I tell ya. But anyway, now they're all going to want attention. So I guess, really, if you have to approach something to stick to your boundaries, then do that and be proud about your boundaries. Don't ever let somebody else's reactions manipulate you into changing your boundaries or to giving on those boundaries and things. And I think this happens way too often. I think that we internalize the things people say around us, and then we go, okay, well, maybe I'm being unreasonable and I should change, what I'm doing a little bit to appease them a little bit more. And when they're your values and your core values and your boundaries that are there for a reason, then you can't sway on that. You have to just know that, they might think that I'm a bitch right now, or forever, who knows. But if it means something to you, then you have to stick to that. You can't, you just have to know, you have to love yourself enough to know that, how they're internalizing things, it doesn't have anything to do with you. Sometimes, I appreciate positive feedback, especially when people are kind about it, because it's uncommon, I think, more uncommon than common for people to be able to communicate. And so I feel like if somebody's giving me a little bit of criticism, it's hard at the moment, but you think about it later, and you do sort of grow a little bit from that. Or maybe, like I was just saying, maybe they're just hitting below the belt and they're not really, whatever. But either way, you have to use your own mind to determine your value and whether you are actually a bitch or not, whether you are actually mean or unkind or whatever it is. Most of the time we're really not. We're really nice people. My friends that, I think all of my friends have gone through this at some point in their life, and they're not trying to be like mean to somebody or whatever. And so I just want to tell all of you guys that, just keep doing your thing and doing your best. And that's okay, and not to take it too personally when you are going through conflicts with people. Try and keep their shit separate. Try and keep their stuff out of your energy space, and know that things are hard sometimes and we have to have hard conversations, but they'll get over it or whatever, but either way it had to be said, and you had to stick to your boundaries and stick to your guns a little bit. And so being a grown-up, it's all about being not always, doing the easy thing. And it's ultimately really important that we let ourselves feel through the emotions that we're feeling. If we're angry about something, we're angry about that for a reason, and we have to feel through that. We don't have to necessarily respond in some really big, huge way, but we do have to go through the emotions of feeling it. Otherwise it becomes pent up, and it displays itself in a negative way in our personalities later on, or in our our stress levels and mindsets and stuff later on. So whether you're sad and I'll do a whole nother video on how to cope with things that are going on around the world, and maybe even things that are going on in your own life that make you sad and angry, and how to sort of feel the emotions, let yourself have some downtime to really process that stuff, and then how to use some skills to kind of bring yourself back up and see the, gratitude is always one of those, of course, and loving yourself. So, all right, you guys, if you don't love yourselves enough, then I love you too. So just remember that, and that the people around you love you. And if you ever need help with anything, like you're down or anything like that, shout out to your friends because they don't mind. So everybody is okay with having somebody say, I'm just in a freaking funk right now. I don't know what my deal is. And as soon as one of my friends says that, it kind of puts up a flag to me, like, okay, check on them in a few days, make sure that you're checking in with them because they made a statement about it. So, just know that you're not, when you're going through stuff, other people are going through stuff. We are all going through stuff. We all have our times where we just want to pull the covers up over our heads and be sad. And that's okay. We're supposed to do that. That's, processing. So, anyway, okay. Love you guys so much. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And I will be back here soon, live. I'm going to try and do more lives. I'm doing homeschooling and all sorts of stuff. Right now I'm about to start a huge clean on my house, but so I will do some more lives. I might even pop in a little bit later in the group to do a live. I have a few things I want to talk about in there. So if you're in the group, I will see you there probably later today. Bye. Have a good day.